Chapter 33. Leiah and the Boy.
Leiah lay on her sleeper in her quarters. Her mind drifted from the viewing monitor's entertainment channel. Although it was downtime, for some reason it came to her that she hadn't attended to Captain Zentran's quarters properly. She decided to correct the situation immediately. Pulling on her light work overall, she made her way to his quarters. On the way, realizing she'd forgotten to put on underwear and shoes, she felt strangely that on this urgent occasion, it wasn't important. So she continued without them. It had been a number of sequences since she'd seen Captain Zentran. Perhaps she'd run into him now, being so late in the sequence. The idea appealed to her, but remembering her lack of underwear brought embarrassment. Knowing he was away most of the time though, running into him seemed unlikely. She knocked lightly, but somehow she knew he wasn't there. Opening the door carefully, she glanced around with the respect she'd grown accustomed to. The sight of Zentran's modest living space met her large dark eyes as she stood in the doorway. Not a hint of her neglect was visible to the most discerning eye. Every item in the sparsely furnished room was positioned exactly as an astute person would have appreciated. Leiah's experience and personal dedication for this particular apartment had seen to that. Different placements for his personal items had been tried until the perfection she'd strived for had been achieved. There had been plenty of time. She hesitated only for an instant. For some reason, which she wouldn't have been able to explain had she been questioned, she fetched an eating utensil, went to the viewing monitor and unfastened the mounting that secured it. She wouldn't have been able to explain it because this was beyond her training. Somehow she knew how to do it though, and that it was important. Behind the cover, she saw a device which to anyone untrained in technology would have thought belonged there. It wasn't supposed to be there though, and for some reason, Leiah knew that. Disconnecting the wiring surprisingly presented no problem to her. Neither did connecting the standard wiring. Withdrawing the device, she placed it in the pocket of her light work overall. Then she replaced the mounting surround with the deftness of an experienced technician, even though she'd never done anything like it before. Leaving Zentran's quarters, she felt pleased in having rid it of unnecessary clutter. Crossing the courtyard back to her quarters, with the piece of equipment still in her pocket, only the quiet sound of her bare footsteps and a soft melody that she hummed pervade the twilight in the courtyard. She withdrew the clutter from her pocket and tossed it into a waste disposal unit as she passed it. The sun on the horizon, where it always was, illuminated the room of a young boy. It was downtime, but the blinds had opened. Soft light streamed through the force field window onto his face. He glanced at the remote that opened the blinds. He hadn't opened them. The view of the garden outside intrigued him. It wasn't real. Everything in the garden was artificial. He'd never seen real flowers. Even if he had, he wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. The colors offset the amber haze of twilight and drew his attention as if he'd never seen them before. He sat up to get a better view. The temperature outside seemed warmer than usual and felt inviting. Quickly and silently he dressed and tiptoed to the back door. It should have been closed, but now he found it slightly ajar. He wasn't that young not to notice a well-proportioned female form walking in a carefree manner across the courtyard. The tune she hummed also intrigued him. It seemed to sparkle in the quietness of downtime. Her face remained unobservable as he walked through the small garden to the courtyard, but he imagined it to be the most beautiful one he'd ever seen. The twilight sun was in front of her as she walked away from him. It shone through her lightweight garment, revealing an exquisite naked form beneath. Something glinted as she tossed it into the waste disposal unit. It seemed out of place, but everything seemed so vivid to him now. He ventured into the courtyard and climbed the side of the waste disposal unit. Curiosity for what had glinted in the twilight revealed an electronic device. He knew it shouldn't have been discarded. Withdrawing it, he brushed off some waste matter. It appeared important, although nothing like it had been covered in technology classes. Perhaps he'd learn of it in future classes. No, something seemed to indicate that this was an old device. With the same unexplainable feeling, he knew that it should be handed into the council at the Alpha 1 building as the new sequence was about to start. Fora looked at the boy in front of her. She recognized the memory crystal immediately.
Found it in a disposal unit,
he said shyly. He looked into Fora's blue eyes. Even without the heightened awareness he'd been experiencing, her face appeared as a goddess. His thoughts returned to the woman's form he'd seen walking away, outlined by the light that shone through her dress. He'd not seen her face, but here was one that would serve to complete the picture.
Thank you for bringing it in,
said Fora. The enhanced visual clarity he'd been experiencing left him speechless at the sight of Fora's smile. It lit up the room with soft rays of light. He knew he should leave now before he was missed at home.
Goodbye, miss,
he said simply before he left. Curiously, Fora looked at the memory crystal. She turned it over to confirm it was the one she'd used previously. The sensor still attached left no doubt. With a knowing smile, she connected it to the communications cables the way she'd done before. Zentran lingered for a while just to look at her. Then, satisfied that he'd have some information to work with, he withdrew and re-entered his body on the space cruiser, hurtling through space towards Delta 4B. He rolled over to look at Zack. It appeared as if he was sleeping, but wasn't. Zentran outlined his plan to get data from the central computer as to the whereabouts of their friends. Zack turned to Zentran.
Thanks,
he said simply. Inwardly, however, he wasn't interested in technology helping him this time. He stood up and wandered over to the controls. Zentran lay, considering recent events. He so wanted to have a normal life with Fora, but with both of them being far from normal people, what would that amount to? He wondered about Nebulon and Venru as well. Were they already encased in look-alike bodies? What of all the countless others, trapped in machines that looked like people? Leiah and the boy came to mind, and for some reason, he thought about Nakas and the Qtons. He thought about the rest of his people, the people of Delta 4B, suppressed and conditioned into submissiveness. Also, the proud Trinorians he'd come to know. He knew all of them were his responsibility. Unknowingly, they depended on him. He, Zack, and possibly for it too, might die in a quest that others were oblivious to. Live or die in the attempt, his honor was of more consequence than his physical form. With sleep, he saw the faces of all he'd ever known drifting by. Childhood friends, laughing with the carefree disregard of the young. Zack's face when they'd reversed his deprogramming. Fora, as he'd first seen her when Zack introduced them. The dull faces of his people, who'd given their all. How did one measure a good person? Intelligence? Quickness of mind? Power of mind? No. It was the resolve in regard to others. It might be found in the most feeble-minded. He felt for them. Yes, these were his people. He woke suddenly with Zack shaking him. They were about to exit the light jump.